Hello Bulldog fans, welcome into the 2018 Samford Baseball Season Preview. I'm John McAfoose with Samford Athletics, joined today by Samford head baseball coach Casey Dunn. Casey, thanks for being here.
Great to have you.
Well, Casey, you've got a lot of guys coming back from last year's team, and we're going to talk about them, but I want to touch briefly on the guys you lost from last year because you did lose a talented group of 5 as well. Mikhail Kozanov, a big part of your starting rotation, a couple of bullpen guys, and Jared Brasher and Tanner Cunningham, and 2 key outfielders, and Kevin Williams Jr. and TJ Dixon. Talk a little bit about replacing that group, not just on the field, but kind of from a leadership standpoint as well.
I think the biggest thing you mentioned, it was only 5 guys, so it wasn't a lot lost in terms of numbers, but it was some really quality pieces and some important guys to our team. You know, you take Mikhail, who was a weekend starter for us and had success, and you know, Jared Brasher obviously was a huge arm at the back end of games for us, and Tanner gave us a lot of meaningful innings. So you're replacing 3 guys that pitched a lot for you, and then obviously with what Kevin gave us in his 1 year was helpful, and TJ being an integral piece of our offense for 4 years. You know, he solidified our leadoff spot his entire career, and he's going to be difficult to replace. And his leadership and just the energy he brought to the game is something we're going to have to fill with a younger guy this year.
Let's talk about who is coming back, which, as we mentioned, is most of your team. The starting lineup outside of Dixon and Williams Jr., everyone returning. What do you see from those guys coming back this year, and how good do you think they can be?
I think you gain a lot of experience, and that's the thing. We went from an extremely young team a year ago to a young team this year. You know, we'll still play 4 sophomores on a regular basis. We'll play 2 freshmen on a regular basis, and really Austin Edens will be the lone senior that's in the starting lineup opening day. So it's still a really young group, but at least this year, outside of 2 pieces, it's guys who got to play 50-plus games a year ago, and you hope that translates into a more steady year and a more steady performance for those guys.
You mentioned Austin Edens. It seemed like maybe he was hampered a little bit by injury last year. What do you see out of him so far in camp this year? Do you think he's healthy coming into the year?
I think, no question. You know, I think his health has definitely improved, and he's starting to gain his strength back. You know, Austin is a very physical guy, and, you know, coming off surgery after his sophomore year, last year was a challenge for him, and I think his numbers, you know, reflect just his lack of strength that he had. So he's worked hard to get back physically what he had before, and we're excited to get him in the lineup again every day. And again, you know, he's a guy that's been in there every day for 3 years, and this is a great opportunity for him as a senior to show growth and really be the guy in the middle of the order that other teams fear.
I want to ask you specifically about the sophomore class. A lot of those guys came in last year as freshmen and stepped in right away into the starting lineup and made an immediate impact. Guys like Taylor Garris, Ayrton Schaefer, Anthony Mulryan, Brandon Fryman. Now that they've got a year of collegiate experience under their belt, what do you expect from those guys in their sophomore campaigns?
Hey, you hope their leadership ability grows. You know, all of those guys obviously came to us as good players and guys that were leaders on their high school teams, and then last year did a good job of being supplementary pieces as freshmen. But this year you hope they start gaining in that leadership role. And what Taylor and Brandon did on the infield defensively last year for 2 freshmen was phenomenal. You know, I think our left side of our infield maybe as good defensively as anybody in the country, and I know that's kind of a bold statement, but I think there's a lot of truth to that. And what Anthony gave us from a defensive standpoint last year, being able to control a pitching staff as a freshman, was just phenomenal. And obviously Arrington put up great offensive numbers. So you know, I hope we see growth in all 3 of those guys. I think all 4 of them have gotten stronger. They're in better shape this year to hopefully handle the stress of a long season, because, you know, if you look at it last year, all those guys kind of worn down a little bit at the end, but when you come in as a freshman and you're expected to play 60 games, that's a challenge. So I think you'll see those guys, I think, finish this year even stronger.
Let's switch gears a little bit and talk about the pitching staff. We mentioned Kozanov graduating. You do have Stephen Jones coming back. You've got Cody Shelton coming back, who played a big role last year. Who else might we see in the starting rotation this year?
You know, I think who those 3 starters are is still to be determined. I think the one guarantee is Cody Shelton will be in their opening weekend. Who those other guys are is really something we're still trying to figure out. You know, Stephen has done a nice job, you know, over the last 2 years starting when needed, but really hasn't had that consistent year we hope for. And, you know, we're trying to figure out the best way to use him because we do feel like he's one of our more talented guys. You know, and then you got Connor Radcliffe, who had a phenomenal fall and I think made huge strides, who's kind of nursing a minor injury right now. And I think at some point during the season you'll see him on the weekends. Not sure how early it'll be, but Josh Rich is a guy that's pitched with success over the last 2 years that we're trying to extend in a potential of maybe starting. And then Sam Strickland is kind of that one freshman that you look at that no question will be a starter down the road for us, just a matter of what point.
The bullpen returning a lot of its key pieces as well, including one of the best closers in all of college ball and Wyatt Burns. What do you see out of your bullpen this year? How do you see them developing?
I think, it's comforting knowing you got Wyatt coming back, a guy that's proven and a guy you don't have to worry about. Even if there's a bad outing or two early in the year, he's a guy that's going to do it over the course of the season, and that's really comforting to know. I think Aaron Baldwin has made really big strides over the last year, and you see that a lot with junior college guys. Kind of that second year, they take that big step forward. And I think Aaron has an opportunity to be really just a key piece as a setup guy for us late in games. And then, the thing that we have this year that we haven't had in a long time here is we have a lot of left-handed options in the bullpen. We haven't seen that in Bulldog land in a while, but, we generally have 6 left-handed arms that I think can go out there and compete for us. Sam Strickland is a freshman left-hander that I think is more suited in a starting role, but Billy Krieger is a young guy that I think is going to be able to come in and help right away. And then, we've got 4 older guys that have really taken steps forward. So I think, we've got the ability to mix and match a little more in the bullpen than we've probably had in the last couple of years.
Has there been anybody so far in camp or even going back to fall ball that's maybe stood out to you or maybe exceeded your expectations a little bit?
Troy Dixon's making a position change, and I think he's really adjusted well to being in center field, trying to move out there and replace his brother. And I think he's excited about it. I think from a pro standpoint, most of the scouts kind of see him ending up there down the road. So I think he's really embraced that move well and making a move that's difficult for him, but probably better for the team. And I've been really impressed with just his maturity in handling that adjustment. And I think you're going to see a big year out of him this year.
Let's talk a little bit about your schedule. You get started with some tough competition right off the bat with the UCF tournament to open your season. You've got Rice, who's really a perennial mid-major powerhouse, and then a couple of top 25 teams in Virginia and UCF.
Yeah, we don't limp into things, that's for sure. I think you talk to people, all 3 of those teams will be ranked in one poll or another to start the season. Rice is coming off a difficult year, but finished really well. If you look at their season, the last third of the season, they were one of the better teams in the country at that point when they got healthy, and they return a lot of guys from a year ago. And so we'll get a challenge day 1 for sure, and then day 2 you roll into with Virginia, who's in top 10 in a couple polls, and then you finish things up with a Central Florida team that was an at-large team last year. So it's going to be a challenge, but again, I think the nice thing about it is knowing what we have opening weekend is really giving our guys something to work for. And I think our guys are fired up to get on the bus and head south to hopefully a little warmer weather and be able to play against some of the best teams in the country right off the bat.
Finally, what are your expectations for this season? Again, you've got a young team, but a lot of guys have that first year under their belts now. How good do you think this team can be by the time the SoCon tournament rolls around?
I think it's going to be interesting. I think, a large part of that is the health factor. I really think on the front end of things, we've got a shot to be competitive with anyone in our league if everybody stays healthy and things go well. We've got some depth issues at a couple spots, and, if the wrong guy goes down, it could make for a tough season. But we're excited to get going. I think our league is going to be really good this year. Last year was a great year for our league in terms of conference RPI and taking a big step forward in terms of just the status of our league around the country. And I think with what people have coming back this year, our league has a chance to be in that 10 to 11 range in terms of conference RPIs, which out of the 32 leagues, if you're a top 10 league, that's pretty dang good baseball. So we're excited to get in there and compete and hopefully, finish things off strong.
Casey, thanks for your time and good luck this season.
Thanks, Sean.
Samford will open up in Orlando, Florida with the UCF tournament February 16th through the 18th and return here to Joe Lee Griffin Field for their home opener against Jacksonville State on February 20th. And you can catch that game and all Samford's home games all season long on the SoCon Digital Network.